Welcome back to the broadcast. It's Friday, December 7th, 2018. I'm Sean, your host. The website, scriptureandprophecy.com. Don't forget about the website. That's where you go to find the archives, blog posts, devotionals. That's where you go to support this work and to be a part of making this happen. So, scriptureandprophecy.com. Today we are resuming our study in the book of Jubilees, which is an extra biblical book found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, full of information. And again, go back to episode 1 if you want to know why and why we put value on it and all of that. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into that for every single episode, but yeah, so go back to episode 1 if you're listening for the first time. Today we are looking at chapter 5 and 6, and chapter 5 deals with the fall of the angels and the flood. And it fills in gaps, kind of, but really you could come to these conclusions pretty easily by just reading the Bible. You know, people hear about the fallen angels coming down and mating with women and producing Nephilim, producing giants. And they think, oh, that's ridiculous to say that, that's not in the Bible. Well, it absolutely is in the Bible. So what you're going to read here, you're going to find in the Bible. You can go to Genesis chapter 6. And I hate that I have to point this out, but it's the church in general is very ignorant about this. Incredibly ignorant about this. So I'm going to take 2 minutes here to do this. Genesis 6. And this is what it says in Genesis 6. And then I'll get to the book of Jubilees. And it came to pass, when the men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, which that term there, sons of God, in Hebrew is B'nai Elohim, which is only used to describe angels. One example is in the book of Job, and it says, the sons of God came before the Lord, and Satan was among them, or with them. It's the same words, B'nai Elohim. That's when it's very, very clear. Yeah. Not only that, all the historical books like Jubilees, Enoch, Jasher, they all say this, and then the theme throughout the Bible makes it very obvious that that's what took place. But nonetheless, you have these theologians, these people who go to these Babylonian institutions to learn how to be pastors, and yet they don't understand these basic things. All right. Sons of God saw that daughters of men were fair, and they took them wives of which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit will not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. When the sons of God came into the daughters of the men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. It's pointing out that some of the legends based on these mighty men, these mighty giants that came as a result of the sons of God coming down and taking wives and producing children. All right. Let's get to Jubilees. Let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 5, verse 1. And it came to pass, when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the angels of God saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, that they were beautiful to look upon. And they took themselves wives of all whom they chose, and they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its ways. Alike men and cattle and beast, and birds, and everything that walketh on the earth, all of them corrupted their ways and their orders, and they began to devour each other. And the lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of all men, thus evil continually. Real quick. Notice it's pointing out that men and cattle and birds, and so in other words, not only was it human beings whose ways and orders were corrupted, genetically altered, but it was the animals as well, as you can clearly see here. Is that not unlike the days we're living in right now? And the result of this in Noah's time was that God said, "This is disgusting, I'm going to destroy the earth." Likewise, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. Verse 3, "And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all the flesh had corrupted its orders, and all that were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before his eyes. And he said, I shall destroy man and all flesh upon the face of the earth which I have created. But Noah found grace before the eyes of the Lord." I want to stop right there real quick. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. We're always talking about, or I'm always talking about, how if you follow Christ and you live for God, the world is going to hate you, right? You're going to have to deal with persecution. It may not be fun. But the other aspect of that is that the favor of God is upon you when you walk in righteousness and you walk and stand for his ways. In the worst time in human history, the most corrupt time in human history up until now, because Jesus said it would be worse here in the last days than it's ever been before. But at that point, it was, the bloodlines were corrupt, the DNA was corrupt, they were creating its and things, splicing genetics together. And I don't know what the technology was that was used back then. Don't fall for that baloney. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I get fired up about this. Don't fall for this baloney they teach in public school and university that it was cavemen and they were just so primitive and stupid. They built structures back then that we are unable to recreate today with that kind of precision and with that kind of heavy rock. So, no, they weren't primitive, they weren't stupid. In many ways, they were far advanced, further than we are. Oh, we're so ignorant about this stuff. And we believe what's pushed out on these stupid TV shows and stupid things like the History Channel. And it frustrates me because it's just not true. I mean, if you read this literature, you can find out they weren't dumb. They weren't cavemen who didn't know how to do anything. They were building amazing structures. Look at the Egyptian structures as just one example. Look at Stonehenge. There's so many examples of things that we can't build today with our modern technology. Anyway, where was I going with this? Okay. Even in a time like that, one of the most corrupt times in human history, Noah still found grace and favor in God's eyes and was still supernaturally protected. I mean, God destroyed the entire earth with a flood. Everything on it. Yet, Noah was saved and preserved. If you think about Daniel is in Babylon. I talk about America being Babylon or the West being Babylon. Or at least Babylon-ish. And how hard it is to walk for Christ in Babylon. But you can still find favor with God in Babylon. Everywhere Daniel went, he was finding favor with the kings and being exalted. You think of Joseph, who was captured. He's in Potiphar's house. Finds favor with Potiphar, is put in charge of everything. And then persecution comes, finds himself in prison. But then he finds favor in prison, and he's like in charge of all the inmates. And then he finds himself before Pharaoh. And then is placed in a position of power to be the most powerful man in all of Egypt. Even in the most awful of times, God's favor can be upon you, and He can give you favor with your boss, who may not be a believer. He can give you favor with, the leaders of your country. I mean, God, there's no end to what God's favor can do for you. Psalms 84:11 says, "For the Lord God is a sun and a shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No thing will He withhold from them that walk uprightly." God takes notice when people go out of their way to walk uprightly and to walk in righteousness and holiness. Psalms 30 says, "For his anger endureth but a moment, but his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." I just wanted to share that with you this morning. Verse 6. We haven't gotten very far yet. Verse 6. "And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth." It says that, did you notice it says that he sent them upon the earth? There's a theme in these books, Enoch and this book, that the angels actually were supposed to come down and teach man about God. Like that was the original plan. Like that was the original goal. So them coming down, leaving their, this was intentional, is the theme that you find when you're studying these ancient manuscripts. But what ended up happening is they lusted after the women. And that's when all the corruption happened. Let me read that again. "And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave commandment to root them out of their dominion. And he bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth, and to behold, they are bound in the midst of them, and are kept separate. And against their sons went forth a command from before his face, that they should be smitten with the sword, and be removed from under heaven. And he said, Thy spirit will not always abide on man, for they also are flesh, and their days shall be 120 years. And he sent his sword into their midst, and each should slay his neighbor, and they began to slay each other till they fell by the sword, and were destroyed from the earth. And their fathers were witness of their destruction. And after this they were bound in the depths of the earth forever, until the day of great condemnation, when judgment is executed on all those who have corrupted their ways and their works before the Lord." So what it's saying here is that God was so mad that he had them bound, and they're bound till this day, and they will be bound until the day of judgment, right? Also, he sent a spirit of war amongst the giants, and they slayed themselves. And you have to remember, they were the children of these angelic beings, and the angels had to witness this and were very distraught about it, according to the book of Enoch. But before you say, well, where's that in the Bible? About these angels, their sin, and during the time of the flood and being bound up? Well, all you have to do is go to the Bible and go to 2 Peter chapter 2. Verse 4 says, "For he spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment." And you say, well, what's the context? Well, verse 5 tells you the period of time that he's talking about. "And spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the 8th person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood of the world, flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that should live ungodly." So the time of Noah and the time of Sodom and Gomorrah is to be an example to us, which we clearly haven't gotten the message, have we? Because we've embraced everything that has to do with the times of Noah and the times of Sodom and Gomorrah. Therefore, we should expect that judgment will eventually fall. Verse 11. How far are we going to get today? I don't think it doesn't look like we're going to get to chapter 6 today, my friends. We're going to have to settle for chapter 5. "And he destroyed all from their places, and there was not left one of them whom he judged not according to all their wickedness. And he made for all his works a new and righteous nature, so that they should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be all righteous, each in his kind always." I think, see that script, that verse right there is kind of strange. It says, "And he made for all his works a new righteous nature, so they should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be all righteous, each in his kind always." Ken Johnson has a little footnote here, and he says, it seems to be saying God placed an abhorrence in each creature so it could not desire to crossbreed with other species. So making it impossible for different species to breed after, to create a different species. However, that hasn't been stopping us from splicing their genetics together, has it? Verse 13. "And the judgment of all is ordained, and written on the heavenly tables in righteousness, even the judgment of all who depart from the path which is ordained for them to walk in. And if they walk not therein, judgment is written down for every creature and for every kind. And there is nothing in heaven or on earth, or in light or in darkness, or in Sheol, or in the depths, or in a place of darkness which is not judged. And all their judgments are ordained and written and engraved. In regard to all he will judge, the great according to his greatness, and the small according to his smallness, and each according to his way. And he is not one who will regard the person of any, nor is he who will receive gifts, if he saith that he will execute judgment on each. If one gave everything that is on the earth, he will not regard the gifts or the person or any, nor accept anything at his hands, for he is a righteous judge. It's pointing out that, God can't be bribed. Whether you're great or whether you're small, there's nothing you can offer God. He's a righteous judge, and his judgment will go forth. You will stand before him and give an account of your life. You may live up to 120 years, and you may get away with lots of evil, but every tongue will confess, right? Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess, and you will stand before the righteous judge. And you won't be able to talk your way out of it. No lawyer's going to be able to, go to the law and say, well, you're going to stand before a righteous God who knows everything. And he won't accept anything from your hands, for he is a righteous judge. Verse 17. And of the children of Israel it has been written and ordained, if they turn to him in righteousness, he will forgive all their transgressions and pardon all their sins. It is written and ordained that he will show mercy to all who turn from all their guilt once each year. And as for all those who corrupted their ways and their thoughts before the flood, no man's person was accepted save that of Noah alone. For his person was accepted in behalf of his sons, whom God saved from the waters of the flood on his account. For his heart was righteous, and all his ways according as it was commanded regarding him. And he had not departed from aught that it was ordained for him. And the Lord said that he would destroy everything which was upon the earth, both men and cattle and beasts and fowls of the air, and that which moveth on the earth. And he commanded Noah to make him an ark, that he might save himself from the waters of the flood. And Noah made the ark of all respects as he commanded him. And in the 27th Jubilee of the year, in the 5th week of the 5th year, on the new moon of the 1st month, and he entered into the 6th thereof, into the 2nd month, and on the new moon of the 2nd month till the 16th, and he entered all that he brought to him into the ark, and the Lord closed it from without on the 17th evening. And the Lord opened 7 floodgates of heaven, and the mouths of the fountains of the great deep, and 7 mouths in number. And the floodgates began to pour down water from heaven 40 days and 40 nights. And the fountains of the deep also sent up waters until the whole earth was full of water. And the waters increased upon the earth. 15 cubits did the waters rise above high mountains. And the ark was lifted above the earth, and it moved upon the face of the waters. And the water prevailed on the face of the earth 5 months, 150 days. And the ark went and rested on top of Labar, one of the mountains of Ararat. And on the new moon, in the 4th month, the fountains of the great deep were closed, and the floodgates of heaven were restrained. And on the new moon of the 7th month, all the mouths of the abyss of the earth were opened, and the water began to descend into the deep below. And on the new moon, on the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and on the new moon of the 1st month, the earth became visible. And the waters disappeared from above the earth in the 5th week in the 7th year thereof. And on the 17th day, in the 2nd month, the earth was dry. And on the 27th thereof, he opened the ark, and sent forth it beasts and cattle and birds and every moving thing. That, my friends, is chapter 5 of the book of Jubilees. Just another confirmation. I don't understand how the church doesn't know this information. And they don't have to read the book of Jubilees to have it. It should be common. It should be... It's like everything. There's this massive attempt to corrupt not only the Bible, but just Christianity in general and our history. And there's the attempts to corrupt the minds of the people and feed them false history about our ancestors and about the ancient world. I mean, the understanding we have about the ancient world is just ridiculous, just absurd. And it's all in line with, just everything that's being taught now. Evolution. It's just absurd. It's irritating. It's absurd. They create these museums and set up fake monkey men and say this is what you used to look like. It's irritating. And I'm irritated that the church has no clue about this, and because they're so far separated from it, that they can't understand it or believe it yet. The same people will believe Ancient Aliens. They'll watch Ancient Aliens on the History Channel or whatever channel that's on, and they'll buy that. But they can't buy the truth that's been written down and stored and handed down for generation after generation after generation. It's irritating, to say the least. But the good news is that God has not allowed this to go unavailable. And the good news is there's people like myself and others who are willing to share this information with all of you so that you would be not ignorant about these things. And you say, well, and some people might make the argument, well, what's it matter about the ancient world? Because Jesus specifically told us that the world that we're living in the last days would be a lot like that one. And so here we are. And in order to recognize these things and to see it and to be able to understand the time that you're living in, you have to have a good working knowledge of what it really was going on during the times of Noah, during the times of Sodom and Gomorrah. You have to know these things. You have to understand them. And I'm praying and hoping that I've done justice and that I'm doing a good job of helping you guys be informed about this. It's the number one topic that I've covered on my channel. I mean, if you go to YouTube, let me just pull it up to confirm. Because I think if you go to the YouTube channel, you can type in Enoch in that little search icon, and you'll just get droves of this information. Let's see. So if I type in Enoch, not only do I get the Enoch series that I did, although that's several years old, I probably need to redo that. But yeah, there's so much information. The birth of Noah, Lamech, Enoch, and the Watchers of the Dead Sea Scroll. The whole book of Enoch. Enoch, Noah, Giants, and the Great Deception. Just all kinds of goodies. Giants, Nephilim found in the Bible, and why you should care. That's a 3-year-old video. Again, the whole series of the book of Enoch. The times of Lot from the book of Jasher. The days of Noah, the days of Lot. That series. Lots of stuff. Just tons of information about this on the channel. I really need to have it organized better so that's easier to find, because I've done a lot more videos than that on it. Shoot, I've probably done 20 or 30 videos on this topic. We'll just have to see. All right. That's the broadcast for today. Please consider supporting this mission of truth. Again, we don't have any products to sell, and this is completely 100% listener supported. So if you believe in it, please support it. You can do that by going to scriptureandprophecy.com, clicking on the support tab at the top or on the sidebar. There's all those options available to you, and I appreciate it, and I'm always humbled by your generosity. Peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, hey, God bless.